Hello.
So I'm Katy Pratt, and this is my husband Clayton.
I'm a third-year medical student at the University of Michigan.
And I am a Googler here. I have been at Google for in total 3.5 years, but did leave for a year and then came back and work on GTech supporting Google Analytics.
Many of you probably recognize Katy. She works here. If you recognize me, it might be because you've recently seen me on one of your featured Learning on the Loo advertisements in the stalls at Google. I didn't actually know Learning on the Loo was a thing. Over at the hospital, bathroom stalls are used for urine samples, not advertising. But what do we know? While you guys are busy hanging out and pinging each other, we still send alphanumeric pages and then run across the hospital looking for a phone to get back to each other. On July 1st, 2014, Katy and I packed up our house and put 3 or 4 outfits, our camping and bicycle repair equipment, a MacBook Air, and 2 smartphones in these 4 yellow panniers, a frame bag, and this duffel bag with all of our camping equipment, and we flew to Heathrow International Airport in London, England. Our flight landed at 6:45 a.m., and wanting to make the trip as difficult and as rigorous as possible, we assembled our bicycle in the 4th level parking lot at the airport, and 6 hours later, around noon, after Katy went and found a piece that we actually forgot, we hopped on our bike. We started in London, and we went north. First to Edinburgh, and then across Europe to Istanbul. We ran into some problems that we will talk about. We spent 2 months in Nepal and India, and then 3 months in Southeast Asia before 2 weeks in Utah, completing out our 10,000 kilometer, 28 country, 280 day across the world trip. It was by far the best trip of our life. But to be clear, it wasn't the best trip of our life because we went to Thailand and sat on a beach for a year and sipped mango smoothies. We only did that for 2 weeks. Our trip wasn't exactly a vacation. It was a wonderfully enjoyable but incredibly difficult adventure full of highs and lows, exhilaration and frustration. Each week, many obstacles forced us to live and operate outside of our comfort zone. An abbreviated list of these obstacles might include saddle sores, tingling fingers, and neck aches from sitting on a bike 10 hours a day, day after day after day. It would include flat tires, broken spokes, and other mechanical issues. It would include visa logistics, the fear of financial irresponsibility, and rationalizing our decision to postpone parenthood. Add to that poor road quality, cycling in the rain, oppressive heat, and mountains beyond mountains, plus a possible malaria infection and oncoming cows in India, and the list really is endless. In 280 days, we slept in 169 different places. Most of those places had beds, but not all of them. From the moment we reached France until we landed on American soil, almost 9 months later, we really didn't know how to talk to most people because we only really speak English. Our communication was done by smiling, pointing, and counting on our fingers. In the Alps, it rained for a week straight. Instead of staying inside waiting for the rain to blow over, and instead of putting on my new Patagonia rain jacket, I decided to cycle in nothing more than socks, shoes, and spandex, because I quickly learned that skin dries out faster than clothing. And once you're completely wet, and you can't get any wetter, cycling in the rain really isn't that bad, and maybe even enjoyable. Cycling across the world forced us out of our comfort zone. The way we responded to these difficult situations, once outside our comfort zone, dictated how our day and our week and our trip ultimately would go. Today we're going to tell a few stories that highlight this point. And if by some strange chance, by the end of our talk, someone is deciding to turn in their resignation at Google, I will consider our talk a success. Just kidding, keep your jobs.
Of course we can't say that. All right, so before our trip, my life was very structured. I rode the same bus to work, I came to the same office, I sat at the same desk, I had breakfast and lunch in the same cafe on floor 5 that all of you have lunch and breakfast on. I would go home to the same house and sleep in the same bed every night. Now, my routine was comfortable, and I was good at it. I liked it. But biking across the world, our routine definitely changed. So early on, I tried to apply my desire for routine and structure to our trip. Every morning, I wanted to know, how far are we going to bike? Is the road going to be flat? Is it going to be hilly? Are we going to encounter wind? Are we going to encounter rain? I need to know these things. So, have we found a place to stay every night? And will I have a place to shower? I like showering. Sticky, sweaty legs at the end of the day in your sleeping bag or in a bed are not that fun. So, the answer to a lot of these problems was solved by Google Maps, bicycling directions, and weather apps. But, so I looked at Google Maps a lot, in England and in France. But once we got to Italy, Google Maps, bicycling directions failed. They totally didn't exist. So I didn't know what to do. My whole idea of planning and being mentally prepared each day changed. In Austria, someone told us about another website that we can use, so I tried that for a while. But in Albania, everything failed. The second largest highway in the whole country turned out to be a washed out road that we just like rode down in and rode through puddles and mud. And it got worse as we went east. In India, cities that exist on Google Maps didn't always appear in the same places, or places that were supposed to have towns weren't always towns. So, at some point on our trip, we stopped checking maps and weather, knowing the elevation, booking or looking for a place to stay. You kind of get to a state of knowing, like, whatever happens today, we can do. But it wasn't an immediate switch. It took being okay with not being able to control everything and being okay with that, and then some awesome experiences happened. So the first one I want to talk to you about is wild camping. So this is exactly what it sounds like. You camp in the wild, as in you stop on the side of the road and just pitch your tent. So this was totally foreign to me, and my rule-following self had a hard time with this because it's illegal in some places. But you have to do it at times because hotels or locals to befriend don't exist. So I knew this was going to be a thing going into our trip. But before we got better at the wild camping process, we were bad at it. One specific time we were looking for a place, it was after dark, which was our first mistake. We're down a dirt road, and we're like, this place looks good, although we can't see anything because it's dark. So we're about to get off the bike when we hear a pack of wild dogs start barking and running towards us. So clearly not a good place to wild camp, so I made us pack up and go backtrack to the last town. Now as we got better at this, we had one wild camping experience on the Po River where we,
In Italy,
where we found a perfect spot. We found a place with water. This was going to be great. So we set up our camp. We were doing everything we should be doing, and it was going to be a great night. The moon was out. The river was beautiful. There weren't too many mosquitoes. But then some local teenagers decided our spot was pretty great too. So they joined us. So all night we listened to techno music on the side of the river. So again, being outside of your comfort zone, and although we didn't have the best sleep that night, it was okay, and it seemed to work out. So we definitely got better at wild camping. Now the last kind of experience I want to talk to you about with the unknown was in Thailand. So we went from Laos to Thailand, and Laos is a kind of third world country, communist country that has more dirt roads. Things were more primitive. But in Thailand, things are much more westernized, lots of paved roads. So we got to Thailand, and Clayton got nervous. Our dirt road adventures were going to end. What are we going to do? So our day going from town A to town B, he thought, maybe we shouldn't take the direct route. I think there's a pretty good road this way. I think we should go this way. And I thought, okay, we'll get there. Why not? So we followed what we thought was this road, which turned into a dirt road, which turned out to be pretty washed out. We crossed multiple rivers. It turns out we had to climb 3 mountains on a dirt road the size of maybe 2 of our tandems and actually push it over these mountains. And we're talking like push as in like this, up and over these mountains. It was hard. It was not in our route, but it was fun. And being okay and outside of our comfort zone made me and Clayton okay with this kind of experience, which is why it was enjoyable.
I would like to talk about bike maintenance. The thought of keeping this loaded tandem up and running for multiple countries and thousands of kilometers started out as a pretty daunting task. Questions I had were, what if in Serbia we get 4 flat tires? What do we do? What if in Turkey we get in an accident and the rim on our front wheel bends a little bit? What do we do? What if we break a chain while we're climbing in the Alps? There were a lot of things that I didn't know. Before leaving, I said, Katy, how many spare spokes do you think we should bring for our trip? To which she said, are we going to break any spokes? And I said, I don't know. There were a lot of I don't knows, and there were a seemingly endless list of things that could go wrong. The easy solution is just take it to a bike shop. They'll fix it. From the best of my research, I discovered that east of maybe Austria, everything was up for grabs. Eastern Europe, you might be able to find a bike shop. There was one really good touring bike shop in Istanbul. Everything between Istanbul and Bangkok, don't expect anything. So I kind of had the idea that we needed to bring everything that we needed. If we did find a bike shop in one of these small, rural, third world countries, it was likely that the repair equipment that they had would not work for our bicycle. In the West, most wheels are 700 millimeters in diameter, and in the developing world, all bicycles have 26-inch wheels, similar to our mountain bikes. So if we found anything there, tubes, tires, spokes, none of them might be the right size. With this sort of nervous energy, the following happened on our trip. In northeastern Slovenia, I started to hear a weird clunking sound. I'm a little bit anal, and a clunking sound isn't so bad, a little rubbing isn't bad, but a little bit of rubbing for 8,000 kilometers is going to completely destroy whatever's rubbing. So I started worrying. The sound intensified. Somewhere in Austria, Katy started hearing it too, and it was strange. The clunking sound came not when we were pedaling, but when we stopped pedaling. Usually you hear sounds when you're pedaling. That's when chains are moving, that's when pedals are moving. But this sound kind of came right when we stopped pedaling. And I didn't really know what was going on. We stayed with a warm shower host, which we'll talk about in a bit, in Vienna, and this person who had done lots of previous touring suggested the problem might be due to a new rear cassette that we got to climb mountains easier, and it might have to do something with the length of our chain. So I tried some adjustments, took a couple links out of our chain, and the problem came back. By the time we got to Budapest, the problem was pretty constant, and I was kind of in denial, thinking, I don't know what's going on. There's some weird noise back there. I'd always ask Katy if she knew what was going on. She has no idea what's going on.
I'm not a bike mechanic.
And I'm trying to listen.
His job.
I'm trying to listen through Katy and all of these bags. We got to a bike shop in Budapest just as it was closing, and they said, "Come back in on Monday morning." And Katy and I were like, "No, we don't want to give up a whole weekend." So we pushed on. They told us to go to a town in southern Hungary called Szeged. Luckily, 3 days later, I found someone who speaks English to translate my problems to our bike mechanic, who actually was a very good bike mechanic and only charged us $2 or $3. And he said the problem with our bike was that inside the rear hub, there is a freewheel coasting mechanism which allows the wheel to roll and the pedals to not move. It lets your bike coast. He said there was a bunch of grease in there for an unknown reason, and he showed me some pictures. It kind of been chewed up a little bit, but he cleaned it out, threw some oil in there. I wasn't exactly convinced, but the next day our bike was perfect. It worked great. Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia, Macedonia, everything was going good. And then we got to Albania. And we're descending a mountain just south of Tirana, and out of nowhere, we're going 40 miles an hour. This just screaming, crashing, clunking, awful sound just comes right out of our rear wheel. And I know instantly that that problem is back, and it is much worse than it was. Slammed on the brakes. Katie and I both get off. I throw the bike on the ground, probably say a few swear words. Katie picks the bike back up, and I'm thinking, all right, the town's down there. We can see it in the distance. We'll walk there. We couldn't even walk the bicycle because the wheel could not roll if the pedals were not moving. So we said, all right, we'll just pedal downhill. So we got on the bike, shifted into the hardest gear, and we pedaled all the way downhill. And after a while, I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. If this hub is ruined, let's just ruin it. So I stopped pedaling. But the sound didn't show up. And I'm thinking, all right, now we have a bicycle that's broken only when it wants to be. The next day in Elbasan, I thought, all right, wheel's ruined. What should we do? Get on the bike that morning? Totally fine. So now it's like, all right, bike's got a mind of its own. We're just going to continue. If disaster strikes, disaster strikes. That was in Albania. We got to Macedonia. There were some more problems. We went to another bike mechanic. I told him what the other bike mechanic did. He did the exact same thing, pulled out some grease, put in some lubricant, and that got us a couple more days. But by the time we got to Thessaloniki, Greece, it was nonstop pedaling, never allowed to coast, bumper-to-bumper traffic, pretty miserable cycling. We were a week out from Istanbul, and we're like, all right, Greece, developed country. We're going to find a real bike mechanic. We're getting this fixed. Luckily, we find a bike mechanic right next to our hostel, and we go in there. He says, no, this other thing is your problem. Fix this. And we're like, all right, whatever. The next morning, we're climbing up this really steep hill, and we've just gone down the other side of this steep hill. Problem comes back, and we're like, you gotta be kidding me. Hitchhike back to Greece, back to Thessaloniki, tell him the problem. He decides to try to fix the other problem, and we're like, and then to make sure it's fixed, and because it kind of has a mind of its own, I go cycling up and down the coast for 2 hours, trying to elicit this problem, because I don't want to leave if it's still broken. It's fine. Go up the hill, coming back down the other side, problem comes back. And it's just, Katie and I, we sit down on this side of the highway, 30 meters apart, bicycle in the middle, don't talk to each other. And then there was kind of this like aha moment of, our wheel is definitely broken. And all of our worrying about it definitely being broken, is it going to work, is it not going to work, all of that disappeared. And all of a sudden we got over that hurdle and it was like, our wheel's broken. And so Katie said, so should we hitchhike? Katie's a pretty good hitchhiker. But Istanbul was a week away, and I wasn't just going to say, our wheel has problems, let's hitchhike. So I said, we're going to cycle there, and if we destroy our wheel, we destroy our wheel. So for 7 straight days, we cycled all the way to Istanbul, into a headwind, never able to coast. It was pretty miserable. Oh, one thing I need to add. When the wheel totally went kaput, I got online, and I ordered a new hub from the States to be shipped to a warm shower host that we would be staying with, similar to couchsurfing, in Istanbul. We cycle our 7 days. We get to Istanbul. We go to our warm shower host's home. The hub doesn't show up. It's stuck in customs. It's stuck there for a week. We finally get it out, thanks to the help of someone that we were staying with at the time. Take it to a bike shop. He says, great, I'll fix it. Katie and I get on a bus. We go to Central Turkey to sightsee. Get an email from the guy, and he says, sorry, your rear hub lacks an attachment for a disc rotor. If you put this on, you won't have a rear brake for the rest of your trip. And I'm like stabbing myself in the face. Like, you have got to be kidding me. How many problems can go wrong? Call up the guy in the States, say, hey, will you send this attachment? We'd like to have 2 brakes. But knowing that customs is a huge problem, I think we need a backup plan. So I order another one and send it to my sister, who's coming to meet us in Nepal a month later. We get back to Istanbul, the part never arrives. We go to Israel for a week, we come back, it still never arrives. We leave Istanbul 6 weeks later, and the only thing on our to-do list, fix our rear wheel, still had not happened. We arrive in Nepal, my sister gives us the new hub. I get on Google, and I look at every single bike shop in Kathmandu. And per Google, I found the best one, Himalayan single track. I take my hub and my wheel. We're basically turning over the rest of our trip. I take it to this Nepali who speaks a little bit of English, and I said, can you rebuild this wheel? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. I was like, all right. What other options do we have? Katie and I and my sister and my mother, we go off trekking in the Himalayas for a week. We come back early in the morning. I'm walking up to the bike shop by myself, and I'm just terrified. Is our trip going to continue? I walk into the shop, and in the corner on an unswept, dirty floor is a pile of spokes, a hub, and my rim, and I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me. We don't have a bicycle that works. I said, like, what's going on? You haven't done anything. He says, well, this problem, no. The spokes are the right size, the hub's the right size. It's all right. You said you can do this. I'm coming back in an hour to see if you've started. Come back in an hour, there's nobody in the store. And I'm thinking,
things run a little differently.
I'm thinking, all right, either our trip ends or I find out how to rebuild a wheel, because that was where we were. Professional bike mechanics, when they want to build a wheel, they use truing stands and calibrated instruments that help you measure the tension on your spokes to make sure that everything is correct. I did not have any of these things. In my guest house in Kathmandu, I had a cheap multi-tool, a piece of fabric ruler, and one of those floss picks to use as a straight edge. And that is what I used to rebuild our wheel. Instead of using a tension meter to find out if the spokes were tight enough, I plucked the spokes like guitar strings to see how much tension there was, because one side of the wheel is supposed to be tighter than the other side based on which side the chain is on. I went back to the bike shop and I plucked all of the spokes of the industry-made bikes to see if that tension matched the tension on my wheel. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, I read a lot of blogs, and I was on a little bit of a time frame crunch because my sister was leaving 18 hours later. And so I had that night to rebuild our wheel or send our bicycle home because our bike didn't work. The only thing that kind of scared me was that I didn't just need to build a decent wheel that could just roll down a normal paved road. We were heading into Nepal and India with potholes galore, bad roads. We're carrying 400, 500 pounds on our bike, and all of this is resting on our rear wheel. So I had to do a pretty damn good job if our trip was going to continue. But it all worked out. When I was put up against the wall with no other options left, 6 bike mechanics had failed me, problem for the last 3 months. Everything that everybody had tried had failed. I'd done everything I possibly could. We pushed right up against that wall. I was able to figure it out. And that night I rebuilt our wheel and we cycled through all of India without a broken spoke and without having to retool our wheel. When we get outside of our comfort zone, either because we choose to, or in my case because we are forced to, we can begin to realize what our potential is and what we are capable of. I learned more about wheel building and about fixing problems that night than I would have in the next 50 years. I would have just taken it to a bike shop. This rear wheel is the biggest nuisance of our trip, but I couldn't be happier with the outcome. I solved a problem that we both thought was impossible, and our trip was able to continue.
It's true, he did do a really good job, and I was of very little help. I ran for tools down the street. So the kind of last part I want to talk about with getting outside of our comfort zone is something called warm showers. Clayton mentioned this briefly. So warmshowers.org is not just a warm shower. It's a website similar to Couchsurfing, a reciprocal kind of hosting site where anyone can become a member. You go online and then you look at this map and you see hosts and you email them for a place to stay. Now, warm showers is specific to bike touring. So often people who are hosts are bike tours themselves and have used the site on their own tour. And the norm of warm showers, unlike Couchsurfing, is the host provides you with dinner, breakfast, and a free place to stay. So this is a pretty big deal for bike tours. And then you learn about, all the various roads to go on and all the details of the local area you are. Now, why would warm showers be problematic? When I was growing up, my family went on vacations, we stayed at hotels, we did adventurous things, but we didn't stay at strangers' houses. My parents, taught me, like all of you, to be self-sufficient. I was a professional who'd had a job at Google for 3 years. Surely I could afford a place to stay. But night after night for a year was stretching our budget. So warm showers meant relying on the kindness of strangers, which felt very foreign. Now there are the normal concerns you have. Cleanliness. Going into someone else's house, do they have the same standard of cleanliness as you do? You can't really tell from a picture or a blurb. Safety. Going into a stranger's home, you don't know who they actually are. The awkwardness of trying to talk to a stranger. Not everyone's a very good conversationalist. Before our first warm shower experience, I casually asked Clayton, "What if they kill us?" And he turned to me and said, "Well, what if we kill them?" Which was a valid point. However, it never got to this point, and we never actually worried, so I definitely recommend warm showers. We originally kind of did this with the intent of, oh, this will help our trip last longer, we'll meet these people, but really warm showers was so much more and such a crucial part of our trip. I'm going to share a few stories, or just a few people that we met along the way in warm showers. So the first is in eastern France. I don't know if you can kind of see some of that over there with Clayton. Monsieur and Madame Berthier. They spoke no English, and we spoke no to very little French. Clayton took classes in junior high school. Their son signed up for warm showers, and he wasn't home, but he said, "My parents will host you." We had a picturesque evening on their farm in France, and it ended up having the best dessert of our trip. Lots of signs and smiling, and since they lived on a farm, lots of farm animal noises, which we became very good at. They also led us into the whole aspect of a cheese course. The French really do have a whole section of their meal related to cheese, and we got to try so many amazing cheeses. Now the next one is Bashar in Istanbul. Clayton mentioned him. He was the warm shower host who helped us out with our bike hub. We were able to ship the part to his house. He helped us with customs. He helped us figure out who to pay and when to pay, and how to actually get a part out of customs in Turkey. He let us stay in his house for what ended up being 2 weeks, which was significant because he had a flat in the city and he stayed at his house 2 hours outside of the city. So one way, twice a day, he was commuting to his other home because he wanted to show us hospitality and let us stay at his house. Now, when our bike part was not there, sorry, I keep dropping these, thank you. He let us even keep our luggage at his house, all the while showing us local sites, local restaurants, and local foods. Now, another one is Mojca and Aleš in Slovenia. They stopped us on the side of the road because we were riding a tandem, and they ride a tandem, and they invited us over to their house. They said, "You absolutely have to come stay with us." Now, what's unique about Mojca and Aleš is blind, and he sits on back, and Mojca sits in the front. He was so intrigued to see another tandem, he ran his hands over all the parts and components and asked so many questions. The last one is Rene in Laos. He's a German expat living there doing micro lending for the surrounding 135 villages. He up and moved to Laos knowing zero language just to make a difference and thought it would be a great experience. Now lots of people might think he's a little crazy for wanting to do this, but he was making a difference and had such a positive outlook on life. He took us trekking in the jungle, swimming at the local swimming hole. He took us to the sauna, which is how he met and became friends with and learned how to speak the language. He was outside of his comfort zone. Now we were lucky enough to meet these people on our trip and lucky enough to be able to have the experience to interact with them. Now you don't necessarily have to go across the world and use warm showers to be able to meet interesting and new people. You have to be open to it, whether it's smiling at people in the grocery store or saying hi to people on the street. Even here at Google, I think, oh my gosh, there are other people on floors that I don't know, that I don't even necessarily say hi to. So it's just being open to new people and being open to being outside of your comfort zone that you can really have an impactful difference in your life, and people can make a difference in your life. So that's one thing that's really important.
In closing, briefly, much of our life is routine. We are creatures of habit and comfort, and we repeatedly do what we are used to doing. That's not always bad, but it doesn't always have to be like that. Yes, Katie and I were fortunate enough to be able to go on a once-in-a-lifetime journey. However, that journey is over, and it is our hope that we have learned things that we will be able to do and remember for the rest of our life. We discovered how much fun it is to meet new people, to talk to people that we didn't know when we woke up that morning, especially people who are very different from us. We learned how to deal with the unknown and to be okay with it, to accept difficulty and hardship and changing routines and know that in the end everything will work out. We learned that sometimes if we step outside of the routine and confines of comfort, then we're able to accomplish goals and dreams that we previously thought were not possible. We are going to open this up to questions after we show some photos of our trip.
Unless you want to do questions first, Mark. Okay, any questions for us?
From the back.
1 sec, we'll just get a microphone. Sure.
You guys are so awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I have a question. Was there a period of training in preparation for the trip? Are you guys avid bicyclists? Like, how did this all happen? Like, were you always comfortable with these like crazy days of miles and miles of bicycling?
Katie got appendicitis 6 weeks before we left, and her training was subpar.
According to Clayton. So we are both cyclists, but we didn't do a crazy training plan beforehand. A lot of bike tours say that you kind of build up endurance right at the beginning. We were really exhausted at the beginning and kind of slowly got our cycling legs.
I told Katie that she needed to be able to cycle 100 miles within 7 hours before we left. She got pretty close. After 2 weeks, you're just in good shape.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. This is actually very similar to something I want to do while I'm in my 20s.
Good for you.
And I came in a few minutes late, so I apologize if you covered this already, but what were the conversations you guys had with like your friends, managers, like very close like people right before leading up to this trip? Just love to hear that.
So first, Clayton thought it'd be a good idea if we didn't tell any of our family and just sent them postcards, which was not going to happen. But at first, we actually didn't tell everyone right at the beginning, just because we didn't want to be the people that almost went on a bike trip. So we actually started working on things to see, like, okay, could we make this happen before we then told our families? And we told our families on New Year's Eve. We were trying to get them to ask us what our New Year's resolutions were, and then Clayton went off with this is our plan, and they thought we were joking, and we weren't. So that's kind of how we started.
There were really just two big logistical things. Would Michigan let me leave for a year? So I just sat down with my counselor, and she said, take 1 year of personal leave. And I said, sure. And then Katie talked to Google, and having a job held for greater than 6 months proved to be difficult, but she was told, reapply when you come back. It kind of came down to, the conversation that we had amongst ourselves was, we're young, we're in good shape, we don't have a child yet, one's on the way now. And we kind of said if this doesn't happen now, then it might happen in 30 years. But it's either we do this in 6 months or we talked about it for 30 years. So we kind of just jumped on it and everything kind of fell into place.
Well, congratulations. Can you talk a little bit about safety on the bike? I saw one photo and I didn't see any helmets, so maybe some more stories.
Good question.
When we got to Leeds, which was the Leeds, England, third night of our trip, I took off my helmet and buckled it to the back of our bicycle, and I never put it on again.
I wore mine much longer.
Katie wore hers longer. What we found was that cycling was scary in one type of country. In first world countries, cycling is a recreational activity, and there's bike lanes, and people are used to cyclists on the road. That was fine. In third world countries, people are still riding bicycles because that's how they get around. And so we were just kind of one of many. We thought India would be the scariest, and although there was a lot going on the road and we had to pay much attention, the fear of being hit by a semi going 70 miles an hour never happened, because nobody in India can go 70 miles an hour. There's just too much other stuff on the road. Where things were a little bit dangerous, kind of scary, where Katie and I thought we got to get off this road, I would say it would be like Serbia, Hungary, maybe if second world is something, Eastern Europe, because people are starting to get driver's licenses and they have good roads and they're driving really, really fast, and nobody in those countries rides bicycles. As far as accidents, we had 0. We tipped over, I would say, somewhere in England when we were on a very, very small road going about 3 miles an hour, and this car pulled up like right next to us, and I kind of braced us, but then the car went past and we tipped over.
It's the first time I dropped my phone. My phone subsequently broke on the whole trip. Yeah.
Hey, so the bike itself is probably worth thousands, and you probably have thousands of dollars worth of gear on the bike. Is that something you had to worry about as you're traveling around, like at night, just leaving outside the tent, or going to a restaurant, having that out there? Because I'm sure it stuck out like a sore thumb in some locations.
Yeah.
Was that a concern? Or?
It definitely was, and I think at first when it was shiny new, it was a bigger concern. Now it's kind of banged up a little bit, which is good. At the beginning, we started hanging our dirty laundry on it, like, oh, no one will even come near it if our dirty laundry is on it. But yeah, that was a concern. We did have a bike lock to like attach it to things, as well as like the front wheel. But I mean, kind of slowly as our trip went on, we just kind of kept the bike around us. I mean, obviously, if it had been stolen, it would have been a pretty big issue. So we were very careful and aware of it. But it was never.
Most nights we brought the bicycle inside. If a hostel said you can't bring your bike in, we just said, all right, we're going to a different hostel. The fear of it being stolen, I would say, would be the greatest in like urban Western Europe cities where there was some sort of resale value. As soon as we got to east of Turkey, no one was going to steal it because there's nothing they could do with it. If a little kid in Laos steals our bike, everybody knows it's not his.
There's only like one red double cycle, so, which is how everyone said, double cycle, double cycle.
The interesting story is that in India, sometimes you wouldn't be able to bring it up to your room, but you could put it in the lobby. And for weeks, Katie and I would wake up at like 5 in the morning, and we'd hear people playing with our bell. And it was reassuring because our bike was still there, but it was like, great, you're playing with our bicycle. There was kind of this what's ours is yours mentality. And then we'd go down in the morning and they'd show us pictures of like they'd been riding our bike around, taking pictures, and it's like, it still works.
Hi. So is there some sort of like synchronization for riding a tandem bike? And also, follow-up to that, did you guys ever switch orders? Who was involved?
So synchronization, there is what's called the timing chain. They do make tandems that are not in sync, but ours is in sync. So we did have to pedal in sync if our pedals were synchronized on the timing chain. We tried it being out of sync, but it was a little weird. So when we bought our tandem at the tandem shop here in town, he asked us, have you ever ridden a tandem before? And we actually had, because this is our second tandem. He said, I will not let people buy tandems if they've never ridden a tandem, because people think it's like a great idea to go on a tandem, like, oh, it sounds so romantic, but it's actually very hard. And I mean, it's great being together and you arrive at the same time, but there are lots of cons with riding a tandem too. So we were in sync.
If one of us is pedaling, the other person has to be pedaling.
Yeah.
So the biggest arguments were over cadence, how fast to pedal.
Or if you were actually pedaling.
How hard of a gear to be in.
And then to answer your second question, Clayton mostly rode in front, so mostly, always.
There was one day where we were in Utah. We had just kind of gotten through some sandy roads, and it became too hard to cycle with both of us on the bike. So one of us would cycle while the other one would run. And
alongside.
One night I did the cycling, Katy did the running. In the morning, Katy did the cycling, I did the running. When we finally got to a paved road, I hopped on back, and I was there for about an hour.
He couldn't handle it. So the front is actually really hard because you have, those front two bags, right now they're pretty light, they just have pillows in them, but they had, sizable amounts of weight on them. So turning the tandem and maneuvering the tandem is actually very difficult and heavy. Plus he really likes the chaos and like being on the front of the bike, and I actually loved being on the back. I saw so much more than he ever saw on our whole trip. We'd get somewhere and be like, did you see X, Y, and Z? Like, what are you talking about? I saw like pothole, 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 white line, yellow line. So it was actually great.
All right.
Slideshow.
So maybe what we'll do is wrap up the Q&A in this part of the presentation, and then for those that can stay, there's a slideshow here, and we'll just enjoy the slideshow and thank Katy and Clayton for being here today. Give them a round of applause.